Salutations, everybody. It is Matty here today with week 81 of the H.A.M Radio Podcast.
And it is me, the LoneVaultWanderer.
And Carrick from ACG.
Oh, fun
How
times.
you going, Carrick?
I'm doing excellent, thank you.
Cool. And this week, we're going to have a really interesting discussion. But as always, before we roll into that, in the link down below, you will have your mobile podcast. So you can listen on iTunes, Google Play, whatever device you're on. You can listen to us wherever you go. And also, Noah's not here this week. He was going to be on, but right last minute, he was called back into work as he was leaving. So he had to stay extra. And we delayed the podcast to have him on, but fuck us, right? So
Hey, I was able to cook some nice eggs with some avocado.
yeah,
so
I had
thank you,
I
Noah.
had homemade dumplings, so it's fine with me too.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, dude, they're fire. Anyway, let's just get into it today. Let's not hold back. We know what everyone's here for. They want the ultimate discussion on Bethesda's review copy policy. But before we get into that, Lone, you made a good suggestion that I think we should all take into consideration, which is labeling our stance on this clearly.
Yeah,
so there's
we
no
figured
confusion.
that because what we don't want is this entirely one-sided discussion about this. And a few people on Twitter were commenting how, there are multiple sides that need to be covered. So we're gonna try and very clearly label each side of the argument that we're each going to be taking. So for me, I'll be a very assholey devil's advocate. I'll pretty much be pointing out putting my personal feelings aside and pointing out as many holes in arguments that are being made against Bethesda's policy. So essentially, I'll be arguing for Bethesda's new policy, or at least arguing why it isn't that bad. And then, Matty, I believe that you'd be arguing against it, or...
Yeah, I mean, for me, I will admit my personal stance is it's very middle of the road. There's some good, some good, some bad. But yeah, for the sake of the podcast and the argument, I'll be arguing against Bethesda.
Yeah, and then Carrick can just jump in whatever and add his 2 cents. So just bear in mind that those are the sides of the arguments that we're taking. We're not. Yeah. We're trying to cover both sides of the argument here and be as fair as possible.
And also, I want to put out there that none of us at any point in time have received money from Bethesda whatsoever for any content creation. So before you say Bethesda shill, that's a new one I've been getting lately. It's Bethesda shill, like they're fucking paying me. No one here has been paid by Bethesda ever, or I at least have never been offered. I haven't been offered. Our personal business relationship and friendship with them does not impact the discussion today. And the reason we're going through all these precautions is because this has slowly developed into a very controversial and divided discussion that shouldn't have really been big news. And I don't think Bethesda really expected, at least I'd imagine, they didn't really expect the backlash, the response that it's been getting, where everyone's been talking about their review copy policy.
Yeah.
So now that that's all out of the way, all the precautions, let's reread the review copy policy from Bethesda themselves, because I think it's important that we retrace where this originally came from. I probably should have had this up in advance, but I can... Wow, first thing that comes up, review policy. Boom. All right, yeah, and some of the headlines are why Bethesda is wrong about its new video game policy. And also, it's no secret that we make YouTube videos on video games. So sometimes in our argument, you'll hear, I don't want to speak for you guys, but I'll say, you'll hear a bit of bias, but that's not coming out of entitlement or the demand for a free game. That's another argument I've been seeing a lot of, is that, you're just you're a YouTuber, you're a reviewer, you just want the free game. Not everyone's entitled to a free game. But in the honest opinion, nowadays, the way reviews work, our reviews can go up whenever. It's about the audience. So we're having this discussion for the consumer, not for our own personal gain and benefit. Does it impact us? Absolutely. But from the sounds of the article itself, it's mostly positive for YouTubers. So we're not really too jaded about what's going on here. I'm trying to find it's all articles about why Bethesda sucks. I can't find it directly.
I think it's on Bethesda.net.
No, I know, but I can't find it directly on them. Like, I typed in Bethesda review policy, and it's like, why Bethesda's wrong. Why Bethesda's new policy is stupid. All right. I finally got it here. Hold on. It's loading. Oh, of course. Enter your birth date. Well then.
Okay. As an aside, every time I enter Bethesda's website, I have to enter my birthday. It's so annoying.
I know.
It's the only website that does that.
All right. I have it. So let's reread this. At Bethesda, we value media reviews. We read them, we watch them, we try to learn from them when they offer critique, and we understand their value to our players. Fair enough. That's a good start. Earlier this year, we released Doom. We sent review copies to arrive the day before launch, which led to speculation about the quality of the game. Since then, Doom has emerged as a critical and commercial hit, and is now one of the highest rated shooters of the past few years, which also low-key confirms that the game sold well, which a lot of people were doubtful of because of all the sales, and they made it free at E3 for, like, I think it was the first campaign level was free, something like that. So it's good to hear that it sold well. With the upcoming launches of Skyrim Special Edition and Dishonored 2, we will continue our policy of sending media review copies one day before release. While we will continue to work with media, streamers, and YouTubers to support their coverage, both before and after release, we want everyone, including those in the media, to experience our games at the same time. We also understand that some of you want to read reviews before you make your decision, and if that's the case, we encourage you to wait for your favorite reviewers to share their thoughts. And then it shares the release date for Skyrim Special Edition and Dishonored 2. So, to summarize this article, they state that because Doom sold so well and reviewed so well, despite its lack of review copies before launch, they are justifying that by saying we're going to do that same thing we did with Doom with future titles now. So before I go back to my summarization, I think that's the first flaw in the argument, because their original reason for Doom being released on that day was because we want everyone to play together, and because multiplayer servers, it wouldn't be an optimal experience because they wouldn't be populated. I've played plenty of multiplayer games before launch. Forza Horizon 3 was probably the most recent one that comes to mind. Carrick, you did as well. I reviewed that just fine, had an optimal experience. So for me, I look at that and just kind of shrug my shoulders at it. Anyway, like I said, to summarize this, though, they're saying wait for your favorite reviewers if you have to. This is our policy. They're not forcing it down anyone's throat. They're saying if you want to wait to buy it, you can. They're saying we read, we watch reviews, we try to learn from them, and we understand the value that they have. So with all that understanding said, you wonder if they're just saying it for the sake of saying it so that they don't look like the bad guys, or if they actually, like, are they trying to butter us up so when they drop the heavy news, which is in the middle section, that it's not just as heavy. That's kind of the vibe I got, though. But I'd love to hear everyone's thoughts on this, because I've literally been counting down to this.
Carrick, feel free to start.
He's adjusting his seat and everything.
So, okay, I don't really give a shit about if people, like, understand my position on something, if it helps me or hinders me, but I'm going to say it on your podcast because I think that's only fair to you guys. This really does assist me, because what it does is it truncates that distance between a professional review and my own. Whether the day prior IGN gets it and then the next day I do, that means I have a shorter period between them getting a bunch of hits on a 2-minute review and me actually doing a detailed one. Yes, I did just burn them on purpose. When it comes down to it, I think that that it helps people like Matt, or it helps people like me. Though Matt and I do slightly different things, he does a little bit more of the Let's Plays, where now I'm starting to do more previews. But I think overall we would probably fit into both sections. We would fit into the coverage section and the review section. It does help us. So I want to say that first. It's good news for us. However, I started the entire channel, and if you go and check, and if you watch the very first podcasts, I started my channel for consumers because I had been burned personally by various different situations in the industry. Sound, music, and voice. That's why I do them in reviews, because it's not covered in other people's. That's how I built the entire channel. If you look at PR and you look at the way, and by the way, I worked in PR for 7 years. This is technically a typical positive, negative kind of announcement that you do. We see really good business opportunities in the future. We have to relieve 30 people of their jobs. This is typical, very, very basic stuff for any PR company. And you can certainly tell that was written by somebody who very closely wanted to get some positive, negative. You know, there's like, here's a little bit. Oh, we're going back to this.
Yeah, it was
they
a big
say
contrast between
we care about reviewers, and then they basically are just like, and then no one will get them. So, you know, I think we can argue if it's anti-consumer. The people I have talked to, I asked 30 total developers now to give their word in anonymity. And this is what I usually do because I want to know, you know, what the people inside the industry think. 26 of them thought it was one of the worst decisions that they've experienced, with one of them being in the industry since the Coleco. What was that? The Intellivision?
Yeah.
Was that the? Yeah.
Wow, that's a long time.
Yeah, and stated that it was the most anti-consumer decision they've ever seen from a company in that entire time. Except they did say that PS3, when Sony said get a second job, they did think that was probably quite close. So the developers think that, and it's sort of sad in that aspect that even people underneath the publishers are having issues with it. But in the end, Bethesda releases how many games?
That's a great point you made. I
made this point to Maddie this morning. Bethesda is a company that doesn't release a ton of games. If they choose to do this, their games are inherently buggy. Maybe this, you know, we'll see how that sort of, you know, comes out in day one patches and stuff. If it was a bigger company, which I have heard rumor, because I talked about this 6 months ago when I had heard Bethesda was planning on doing this, there are two other big companies that might do it. If that's the fact, then I think I would have more, like, I think I'd be really nervous. Right now, it's Bethesda, which is, what do we got coming up? We have nothing, right? They haven't announced anything.
Dishonored 2.
I'm sorry, Dishonored 2.
Yeah.
So it's interesting. I mean, it's sad, but my anger's burned out to the point to where I'm just like...
Yeah.
And Lone, what are your general thoughts?
All right, well, general thoughts...
Oh, yeah, I was going to say, your general thoughts on it, and then your devil's advocate.
Yeah, before I be devil's advocate. So, I keep bringing this up as a joke, and I'm not trying to be an asshole about it, to Matty, and he's walked away, so... No, I
have my headphones on. I walked away
I keep saying as a joke that I received Fallout 4 several weeks early, and I'd be lying if I said that didn't help me, in terms of playing the game thoroughly and reviewing it. It really, really did help me, especially as someone that had at the time, you know, a full-time job. And
hi, buddy.
Because of that, I could not imagine, you know, receiving the game Fallout 4 a day before and producing any kind of video content at all, you know, for release.
Yeah.
So I would have like to have seen maybe, you know, a week prior or even several days prior as opposed to a day. But those are, you know, my personal feelings aside. To play devil's advocate for a second, what if I say, like, I've seen a lot of arguments that people have put against this. They say, well, look, this is going to lead to rush reviews. People are going to rush out to make reviews to get the clicks, et cetera, et cetera. What if I say that, wouldn't that be an onus on the reviewer side? Shouldn't reviewers do a more thorough job of reviewing and not worry about getting a video out on day one to get a lot of clicks? Isn't that more the reviewer side as opposed to Bethesda's side?
Yeah.
What would you guys think?
I agree with that. I think for me, the way I worded this poorly when I did say it originally on Twitter, it's that I did say it in response to Leonidas. He's the guy who always asks the questions on the podcast. He really does. He said something to me, and I said in response, well, it's that I'm not going to sit here and pretend that YouTube isn't full of opportunists. Everyone on YouTube's an opportunist, right, and they want to seize that moment where they can climb above the rest. We're all friends here, but yeah, like there's this degree of competition. So yeah, we're thorough reviewers. We are known for our thorough discussions and our, you know, we put our thoughts out there, and people know that regardless of whether they agree or not, those are our concrete thoughts and that we spent time thinking about those. There is going to be someone out there who will get the game a day ahead of time and say, I'm going to rush through this game. I'm going to make a review and be the first one to have a review out there so that I can get a bunch of new subs. Will that result in their channel blowing up? I don't know. I'm just saying, though, that my big problem is that you're going to see a lot of those reviews. And part of it is consumer responsibility. You got to trust the consumer that they're going to do the research before they pick up the product, and they always should. Some people, though, once again, I'm not going to sit here and pretend there's not. There are people who are not going to wait. They should wait. They always should wait. But there are people who are not going to wait. And that's their problem, absolutely. Like you said, that's not really Bethesda's issue because this problem caters to them. But those rushed reviews are going to be put out there, and the rushed consumer is going to eat those up. So it's like a rushed circle jerk almost. And so that's my problem there, is that a lot of people are going to be misinformed, and perhaps someone does gain a following from that rushed review. Then that person rushes another review and another, and he gets known for his speedy, quick reviews before everyone else. Yeah. And so that's my worry with it, is that if this becomes a widespread thing where Bethesda's a big name, they're a big company, they made headlines everywhere when they made this decision. So for me, I see this and wonder, like, what if other companies start doing this? Then yeah, I'd imagine we're going to see a lot of opportunists stepping in and making really rush reviews. But one thing I like about YouTube is that I've I've seen over time with my own work and others, is that if you put in the effort, usually, not always, but if you put in the effort, it'll get recognized, and you'll usually just climb your way up gradually. If you don't, it happens, but usually the hard work is rewarded just because someone will share your stuff.
So, what do you think, Carrie?
Well, I think there's two problems with that. One, we already know Polygon, IGN, GameSpot, and GamesRadar all have retail sources. I have a retail source. So that means I usually get games 2 weeks early, even if I don't get a review copy. 1 week early if the retail source is a little late. Polygon's already admitted multiple times they're going to go to retail sources. So have many of the big companies. So what you have now is you have a situation where the game might technically be reviewed in a state in which it isn't prepared to be patched because Bethesda is no longer worried about review copies. Here's the thing. You cannot accept responsibility in one section and then remove it from another. Bethesda cannot do this and then say they have no responsibility. We can't say that the review system is all on the consumer if in the end the consumer isn't the one choosing this. Bethesda is choosing it. If other companies go forward, the companies are choosing it. The thing is people like to have ways, they like to have it both ways all the time. They like to say, oh no, it's just them and it's not them. It doesn't work that way. It's impossible to work that way. And a company like Bethesda has a system that was already in place. And this is when I contacted the professors. I told Matty about this yesterday. Contacted a good number of professors about ethics, business courses. And I said, listen, this is what's going on. And their exact words were this. And they all pretty much agreed. A soft system, though the review system is a soft system currently, it is still a system in which a consumer gets information, especially from what is considered trusted sources, or sources that, as a combination, most of the time agree somewhat within a Metacritic-style score, which is actually true. Even if we see a low score occasionally, you do sort of see...
an outlier, yeah.
Yeah, and you see the bugs, right? Like, Matty may say, dude, I'm having an AI bug. And I say, guess what? So am I. He may score the game different than I do, but we both mention the AI bug. So you have that situation where consumers are informed inherently from the beginning, and Bethesda is removing that on purpose. Now, that is a sort of a different discussion, because the thing to me is I like to be scientific about it. You have a situation that is currently working or maybe not working as well as you want. Removing it is the nuclear option. And it's funny because Bethesda is the ones who have you blow up a city. And here they are saying, they're like, they just threw their arms up and said, listen, we can't control the narrative, so let's destroy the narrative. Now, I get that. When I say destroy the narrative, I want people to understand what I mean. I have seen and I have been asked to sign influencer, which is what Bethesda says, influencer NDAs that I can tell you right now, if you have an issue with a reviewer, they have, and I've worked on websites before, they have everything from ethics rules for how they do their reviews. They have a ton of stuff. Influencers do not. In fact, I think I'm one of the few that actually created them prior to opening the channel in the first place. So you have a situation where these influencers are told they cannot talk negatively about a game. That is not what a reviewer is told. They are going to be shaping that narrative. And we can't look at a company like Bethesda and give them a big fucking hug. Bethesda is trying to make as much money as possible, and they are doing the one thing they can do, which is to remove any of that discussion from occurring. And they've done it. They've effectively neutered the entire process when it comes to their games. Here's the thing. This is the more interesting question to me after all that. Will it result in them finally being called on the carpet for possibly the buggiest games that are currently being released? And that's what is going to be very interesting to me, because people complained about me complaining about the bugs, where like a Polygon didn't, right? Or a GamesRadar didn't maybe as much as I did. I can't wait to see, like, will that turn up the critique a bit to where people are a little harder on games that I think even me and Maddie behind the scenes have been like, whoa, 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 whoa. These guys are saying this is a fucking, like, come on. Like that. I mean, that's like your MP3 song you just bought from Prince suddenly crashing in the middle. Like, or somebody releasing an MP3 and then patching it. Like, oh, we put some symbols in. What the fuck are you talking about? Like,
yeah,
I bought it. It should work. So that's the more interesting question to me, is what does it mean? Like, will critique be turned up? And that's a good thing.
Yeah.
No.
I always feel that, not to interrupt Elon, but I just want to toss out there, I always feel like personal beliefs shouldn't be help influence a review.
Right.
And you know, by that I mean that if you disagree with Bethesda's decision, I mean, especially as someone who doesn't agree with it, I don't like to say, oh, tough shit, deal with it, but I think when you're reviewing their game, you have to have that tough shit, deal with it, and just review the game itself, because, you know, that's a temporary feeling. You're going to get over it, whatever, you know, upsetment you have is upsetment a word?
Oh, so sorry, what you're saying is that people shouldn't more negatively review Bethesda's games because of this decision.
Yeah, no.
But wait. They're the ones, if that's, okay, but if that's true, then they wouldn't say the things like, wait, okay, so we can't have it both ways. You can't, they're distinctly in their own announcement stating that you should wait, and if you think these things. So, I mean, I get what you're saying. What you're saying is you shouldn't let emotion affect your review if the company does something poor or good, which I think some viewers are going to have a lot of back and forth about that, because DLC purchasing, I just got a bunch of shit.
I mean, by that I mean, when I review a game, I review it as, and you do the same, the game itself.
Right.
If it's you're picking up for the first time, it's the game itself.
Right.
That's how I try to approach the review.
Plus a game by the developer, not the publisher.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, so I try not to let it. How do I word it?
I just want to make sure people are clear on what you're saying, because I actually get what you're saying.
I'll say, like, for example, EA has shitty microtransaction things, you know, for example, when it started with Mass Effect 3.
Right.
But I still say I love Mass Effect 3, and that's a game I'd always recommend, and that microtransaction shit doesn't affect my opinion on the base game itself, because then I think the discussion expands to the DLC from there.
Well, and I think what you're going to hear, and this is just from my own experience, is that a lot of people will tell you and me we're wrong. Yeah. And that because, for example, I rated Titanfall and people said, oh, you forgot the Titanfall DLC is free. And I said, no, because when I turn on Titanfall right now, the DLC doesn't magically show up. I'm reviewing the game right now, not tomorrow. Now, if I reviewed it tomorrow, then I would review it in that way. But I get what you're saying. What I'm saying, I think, is that in a way, Bethesda, the way they've worded it and what they're doing, has sort of put the onus on reviewers. Like, they're the ones who point out if you think you should wait. And they're the ones who point out, oh, look at how good Doom was. So in a way, they're the one focusing or making sure people understand, oh, well, despite Doom, it was great, right?
Yeah.
But despite it, so at the same time, they're the ones who are, in a weird way, if you read it, sort of hinting that maybe reviews might watch that closer. I don't know. I agree with you. I'm just saying. It's
it could go. Thing. One thing I want
to throw in.
Talking too much.
That's all right.
Sorry.
So again, to throw in another a devil's advocate thing here. What if I said that, look, consumers aren't forced to purchase a game day one or even pre-order a game, and because they specifically and explicitly know now that reviews are going to be essentially withheld review copies are going to be withheld until a day before release. So reviews might take a little bit longer to come out. So again, isn't this one of those things where the consumers should be waiting instead of getting angry at the fact that they can't purchase day one?
I'll answer that because Maddie's getting up.
Sure.
We're removing a system that was already in place, so we didn't have to worry about it. Now we're worrying about it. What is the acceptable day? 2.2 days, 2.8 days, 28 days, 30 days? At some point, what happens is you're creating a soft rule for a system that was already in place. And so what I think a lot of people's complaint is their nuclear option, which is to remove the entire system, is causing a ton of soft rules. And soft rules, if you understand anything about like consumerism and stuff like that, is sort of, it's almost like saying, oh, here's my car. It might come with seatbelts. Not 100% sure. But if it doesn't, I can get them later. Or should you buy seatbelts right away? And that's, a lot of people are going to be like, that's hyperbole. And as I stated in Matt's Twitter to somebody, sometimes being really sensationalist is the easiest way to get an idea across. It's not that I believe the same thing about cars, but you can't, when you find out that you're creating multiple systems. In fact, this is something I did for 13 years, was setting up particular groups in particular industries all across the world. And I'm going to tell you right now, whenever you find yourself setting up multiple rule systems, you usually have to look at the initial problem and identify that it's actually, that's where the fix should have occurred in the first place. If you're finding yourself saying, oh, well, you should wait 3.9 days or 6.10 or to patch 2, then you have this. And what if there's no problem with the game? Then the first day purchase would have been fine. It's creating rules for a system that is already there that somebody's just arbitrarily removed. But that's my thought. What do you think, Matt?
What was the question again? Because my brother just.
So again, being devil's advocate, I was trying to say, well, yes, Bethesda has said they're going to be withholding review copies until a day before release, but why can't consumers just wait, and, as Bethesda said, for their reviewers to let out their reviews before they purchase, let alone pre-order?
I mean, that's the one argument I have trouble refuting, to tell you the truth, is that, and maybe I would have thought of something different if I heard Carrick's end of things, but for me, I have trouble refuting that point because I always feel that there's a mixture on that one. That's one thing that I'll say is very hard for me to pick, because I understand why you get that game day one, because there's an excitement in the air before a big game launches and you want to be a part of that, and I totally get that. But that also, does that outweigh making a smart purchase decision? You look at, I think Destiny's an example I can think of off the top of my head, where it's like there's a lot of hype, everyone's looking forward to Bungie's big next game, and it comes out and it's like 6s and 7s across the board, and it's really not that good, at least in my opinion. And so for me, yeah, it's a hard balance to strike, I think, as a consumer, where you want to be a part of that hype, but also do you want to make the smart decision. I do encourage that people wait and watch reviews and stuff, but there are also some games I'll say that you could go ahead and pre-order. Like I said, I'm not, I'll say never pre-order a game sometimes, but also I'll think that, if I look at Final Fantasy 15, for example, because of my personal excitement and because I love Final Fantasy, I'll be like, you should probably pre-order that game if you like Final Fantasy. But also, I'll say that because I look at it as if you're already a Final Fantasy fan, you're probably buying it anyway, right?
Yeah.
So, and the same could be said for Dishonored fans. The same could be said for Doom fans back then. You're a fan of Doom. It's an old franchise. Everyone's excited for it, and everyone's curious about it. And then you hear good things. But before that, if you were a Doom fan, you were buying it anyway. So that's how I kind of stand on it. I'll admit, it's a very middle-of-the-road approach. And I know on YouTube it's better to be black or white, that type of decisive. There's no middle of the road. And so I hate taking that approach sometimes because people get so pissed off about it. But to tell you the truth, I think that's the way I really sit on it is, I'll tell you to pre-order some games. I'll tell you not to pre-order some games. I'll tell you that you should wait for reviews. While some games, I feel like everyone tends to develop an eye for when you get that feeling in your stomach when you watch a game, you're like, that game's going to fail. Or that game looks great, but it's, I don't know. No Man's Sky for sure. I was excited, but I was thinking to myself, something's missing here, and they never just explain why. And lo and behold, what happened? The game came out, and it really wasn't much. There wasn't a lot to do.
There's two things that bother me in all this, too, just separate, is that, one, Bethesda never has any problems using the same media outlets for previews, including Polygon and IGN, the same people that they're now refusing review copies for. So it's like, hey, we're going to let you have previews all up until the moment, and then if you try to say what score you want to give, which Maddie and I have both seen NDAs that state very specifically, you can play the game, but you cannot give a final score until this particular date, which is weird. The second thing that
Gears of War, I think.
Oh, dude, it was like the last 7 or 8 games have said something. To Earth Dawn just did that, but the thing that sort of, I guess, just, I don't know if I want to even say bothers me, but you look at that situation, and that sucks. And then you look at a situation in which I guess when it comes to Bethesda, they're big enough to do this, right? They're big enough to do it. But it just seems to me that and this is me being black and white because I'm consumer advocate. It seems to me that if returns were available in all ways, I wouldn't have as big of a deal. But let's talk about returns for a second.
Okay.
PSN is one of the worst. Sony has pissed me off so much lately. PSN bans you from support chat. This is known. It's on NeoGAF. There's a huge thread. Bans you from support chat if you get more than one return. They won't let you return they won't let you return a game for the same reason twice. So that means if I buy Dishonored 2 and I say I don't like it, I can't say I don't like it on my next return. They ban your chat. You can go and see. You have to fake who you are to get into their chat ID. That sucks. Steam is 2 hours. Xbox is questionable. If those fucking companies figured out their returns, then I probably wouldn't have as big of a deal. Because right now, you have a situation where the consumer is not backed up anywhere, in any way, shape, or form on both sides. That's true. And if somebody wants to argue with me with that, then go and try to return a couple games to Microsoft or a couple games to Sony and see what the fuck happens. Until we are backed up as consumers on both sides, I will always have an issue with less information being given to the consumer. Just real quick, I just want to say,
no, go ahead.
If that was possible, I probably wouldn't be as strongly against this.
Okay. When it comes to returns, I want to know what your stance is, because I remember seeing some guy from Sony saying if you play a game for a while and then you return it, you're a thief. I forgot his name exactly. I want to know what your stance on that. Like, a lot of people were, for their PS4, returning No Man's Sky after playing it for like 20 hours. Would you say that's justified if you decide after that time you don't like a game and return it? Because that's one thing I'm torn on. I'd say that you got to like something to put that much time into it, right? But also, you want to return the game.
It's the same question when you look at somebody telling me State of Decay's game loop doesn't start until about 6 hours in, and they're right. Or Mafia 3, the reverse. The best part's up front, and after that, the repetitiveness sets in.
True.
So each game is almost separate. I would say that No Man's Sky is quite simply possible that if somebody meanders around on that first planet, they may not see the repetitive gameplay loops until 20 hours. However, that is one more indicator. This is where I start getting pissed. This is one more indicator where these companies are not backing up fucking consumers, and they need to. Excuse me, I apologize for the language. They're not backing up.
You're fine. Go for it.
Pooping consumers, and what they need to do is start doing demos. They need to start making sure that consumers are backed up in their returns, and if those things occur, then all these people saying you should wait or you shouldn't listen to reviews, blah, 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 I would have a much easier time seeing their side. But guys, if you are just a consumer who's out there looking at reviews, trying to get ideas for games, and you're not sitting there on NeoGAF 24/7 hitting refresh, it's very easy to get looped into something that you think you have the data. Somebody said this to me one day. They were like, well, you should have had the data about Mafia 3. And I was like, okay, there were some reviews. But what if you go to a place that didn't give you the proper data about Mafia 3, and so you thought you would like it? Is that at some fucking point, where's the support for all consumers? Instead of, hey, Matty needs to spend 8 hours going to NeoGAF, Reddit, 4chan to find his data. It's unacceptable.
True.
I mean, it's not supportive of a consumer, and we can't sit here and say that we love the interaction of a purchaser and a developer and a purchaser and a publisher, and then fucking continually say that the purchaser technically has no goddamn power. Like,
that's true, because this is a very interactive medium where the devs are close with the fans. You know, you'll see them on Twitter responding. You'll see meetups at these big conventions, cosplayers. You see a lot of that stuff in gaming, and it's a very interconnected type of thing. Because I think gaming sprawls from, for example, gaming on the couch with a relative or a best friend or something. So yeah, it's very weird to see this almost disconnected approach now, where you're right that the consumer is almost isolated in a position where they don't have really any power. So
one of the saddest comments I just saw on YouTube yesterday was that one guy said, it seems like in the past it was we make money by making games, and now it's we need to make money by making games. And there's just a little bit of a change to the inflection of that sentence, but really that's what it is it seems like in the past it was almost like an artiste and a patron, and you were backing up those artists because of what they created, and you were supporting them, and now they're looking for money. And by doing so, they have to find specific things in which they create that you may like. It's all become money, like it's switched. And in the 1990s, 1980s, I don't know about you guys, but I would sort of agree with that, where it felt like the scrappiness of the industry lit up people's artistic ability, and then we supported what was good. And now we are supporting what monetarily they want us to support. And that to me is frightening as a consumer advocate, and looking at what Matty has when it comes to his gaming dollar. What's it worth? I mean, is your gaming dollar worth 2 hours and then you can't return a title? Like, what if the title is No Man's Sky? I mean, what do you think? Do you guys think No Man's Sky, do you think that's stealing if they return it after 20 hours? Because it depends on how you play.
It's tough to say because...
Tough question.
Because anyone can have any experience in that breadth of time. I can tell you what, that within 10 hours I had seen all that No Man's Sky had offered me. Really, I did, and I kept playing until like around 25, 30. But I played enough for 10 hours and thought to myself, I've wasted my money entirely. And if that were an option, I would have returned the game. But someone could play, like you said, on that same planet in 10 hours and get a ton of replay value and really think like, oh, this game's so big, until they get to the next planet and I think realize what exactly the game's all about. But it's an experience-based thing. And as a customer support, you look at it from Sony's perspective then, that okay, you can have anyone out there lying and saying, oh, I didn't like this game after 10 hours. More so,
True.
Oh, they saw all they needed to. All right, the game was all right, and return it, get their money back. All right, I'm going to go spend $60 on this game now. And keep. And I'm saying this because I hate to sound like a skell, but honestly, I remember during high school when I was 16, I had $60 to my name for the longest time because all I did was went to GameStop with my two best friends, bought a bunch of used games, played them that week, returned them, repeat. And I did it over and over and over again because I didn't have a lot of money. And so I get why people do that. Trust me, because I did it myself. I would buy a game, return it. And as someone who's pro-consumer but also pro-dev, I think it's important to support the game devs in whatever way possible when they make a good product. That was totally anti-dev of what I did. That absolutely hurt.
But you were buying used copies. So
that hurts
in
GameStop,
any event,
actually, right?
Yeah, like if you're buying used copies, the devs already essentially made their money.
True. Okay.
The thing that I wanted to add to that discussion is that it also does depend on the game you're playing, of course. So, you could have a Doom which finishes, I think the main campaign's maybe 14 hours, 15 hours, something like that, random anyways. But then you have a game like No Man's Sky or Fallout 4, which potentially could be 50 hours plus, and it's hard to put a hard stance in terms of the number of hours you play a game before you can't return it, because each game really does differ. But there is no right answer here. Like, there's no way someone could think of a percentage or a proportion that beyond which you play a game that you can't return it. It's a case by case basis. It cannot be a black and white situation or answer here.
Yeah,
that's why to me I would love demos.
Yeah,
I
agree.
Yeah. Because if it works on your system, it's yours. But you can download a demo and play.
So this is an argument.
To be fair, though, that Doom did do a demo, so that's one path Bethesda took. So if they continue to do that, sure.
This is an argument here that I wanted to throw into the well, because a lot of people have been mentioning it. And this is something that, if you remember, I got so pissed off about. Like, I flipped my fucking shit. So if you remember, with the release of Fallout 4, there were so many spoilers. And I think predominantly it's because of people breaking street date. But there were so many spoilers for that game leading into the weeks of release. And so much so that people on 4chan and stuff were going onto YouTube and were intentionally spoiling the plot and the story for other people. And, I got pissed off at that. Everyone got pissed off at that. Luckily, I had played the game, so I was actually filtering out those comments. But bearing in mind those concerns, again, showing both sides of the argument here, what if I was to say that the reason, part of the reason at least, why Bethesda is doing this is to try and curb that, spoiling culture and to try and stop that games being spoiled before release. What would you think of that?
Well, it's going to be, a lot of these titles only have 6 reviewers, the 6 major websites. So that it doesn't make any sense logistically, at least for the last 2 years. Everything I've seen, if you're going to spoil it, it would be most likely somebody like a Let's Player. There's a couple big Let's Players out of Brazil that get the games 2 weeks early, Saudi Arabia.
But also including, like YouTubers and streamers and stuff that would just stream a game, and YouTubers that would upload videos that are spoilery.
Yeah, those aren't review copies almost ever, because if they were, they'll never get a review copy again. That is for sure. I've actually been dinged for a 1 second like mess up in one of my videos because I let something out that I wasn't supposed to. So I don't know. I mean, I've never even heard. I'm trying to even think how that would be. How somebody would think that an IGN with an ethics list and a Polygon where they're held accountable for those things is better than
let's
giving it
remember
to all these YouTubers.
Let's remember that with Kotaku, they essentially spoiled the start of the game by leaking that script.
Correct.
If you remember that. So there are instances, and I'm not saying it's common.
Yeah.
I'm just bringing up the argument that there could be this worry of the games getting spoiled so many weeks before that would just ruin the potential great experience, for many players. So that could be a reason why Bethesda's withholding copies until a day before release. Until that stage, there's a less of a damage that could be caused.
Kotaku's was a retail that they got though.
Yeah, but I guess it's just the general fear that some consumers are saying, well, maybe this is why Bethesda is doing it.
Yeah, I have two arguments I think go against that though, which is number one, that this was definitely a decision made in a short span of time, from what I can tell at least. The reason I say that is number one, that if Bethesda felt that way, they wouldn't have had consumers, normal gamers, and I'm not talking from a elevated perspective when I say that, but normal gamers who just who aren't reviewers or whatever. Not saying we're on a higher level than you, but they would be the ones testing the beta of Fallout 4's DLC. That was how I got early access to all the DLCs, because someone said, hey, I got a beta code for the system. I don't even have the system. Here you go. And I was very grateful for that. But that's number one. People were leaking the DLC left and right because you put it in the hands of people you don't know, people who are like, they really, I mean, yeah, they signed an NDA, but they don't care. Not in a bad way, but yeah, they're not going to care. It's not their job. They have nothing to lose, and they see themselves doing a service by letting people know that information early. And I think that's... Number one, that's why I think it's a short-term decision. Number two is because they're using Doom to justify why they made the decision. It sold well. It was a commercial hit and a critical hit, despite us giving out late copies.
Well, again, showing the other side, I think the reason why they brought up Doom was because a lot of people had skepticism about the quality of Doom as a game and whether it was good or bad, because Bethesda was withholding review copies until a day before release. And that kind of, I guess, fear happens with any game that is withholding review copies until a day or the day of release, is because the publishers may be worried about the quality of the game. They don't want negative reviews to be out there. But I guess what Bethesda, I think, was trying to do there was trying to say, we weren't withholding review copies for Doom because we thought it was a bad game.
Yeah, but here's the thing, is that there were stories from Bethesda interviews suggesting that they weren't that confident in the product itself, because they rehashed the game, number one, but that the game ended up being fantastic, so forget that part. What is more important is that they didn't really know what would sell Doom. They thought it would be the multiplayer, which ended up being the weakest component of the game. And there were a bunch of stories with interviews. I think it was Pete Hines who said, we were shocked that the single player was what sold the game. So they didn't even know what was strong within their own product. To say that, we held back review copies and then all of a sudden it sold well, reviewed well. To me, that sounds like, they had a great game on their hands. Absolutely. id Tech is very talented. But I'm saying that sounded like a stroke of luck to me. And now they're running with that stroke of luck. Because those are two reasons why I feel this was a decision made kind of quick. Because you have them reviewing DLC, or not reviewing, testing DLC for bugs, expecting people to not leak them. Come on. And then you have them not being able to identify the game that they're using as an example in this article as justification, where they didn't even know what the strong suit really was. So I look at that and I think, how much justification is really here? Also, it's confusing that they didn't really do a great job explaining the system itself, because you have Skyrim, which I got 2 weeks early along with a bunch of other YouTubers, but they just said, oh, there's no review copy. So now I think what happened is that Bethesda didn't clarify that they have two separate categories where you have gameplay promotion and you have reviews. Now,
like Carrick said, like the influencer side of things.
And
an influencer copy, let's call it.
Yeah, I won't disclose who, but when I was talking with Bethesda and I got the game early, I was like, okay, when's NDA lift? Oh, Friday. okay, cool. I'll have my review out then. They said, no, don't do a review yet. Wait for the launch. I was like, all right, that's fine. Because for me, I'm used to that type of stuff. Usually it's a day or two before launch. Some companies do it way earlier. But I was like, all right, they're doing what most games do. I didn't know about the policy until then, but it seems like they've had this ready to go for a while. But they gave it to me for gameplay promotional purposes. So that's why when the NDA lifted, the embargo lifted rather, I posted 30 plus minutes of special edition gameplay instead of a review, which I held back until midnight when the game launched, which actually I was wrong about.
I'd like to get Karek's thought on this. And again, I'll show another side of the argument here. So as you mentioned, there seems to be this split dynamic between review code and influencer code, let's say. What if I was to say that what Bethesda is doing by sending out influencers and YouTubers and streamers the codes earlier than even review codes is because that's forming part of their advertising, and it's just another route where they can advertise their game. Those influencers aren't necessarily reviewing the game, although at the same time they technically are. But what if I was to say that that's what that is? It's people that are reviewing the game are still getting the game at the exact same time, but the people that are getting it earlier, such as YouTubers, are simply becoming now a part of the advertising campaign.
Well, I've always said, not to interrupt you, Carrick, but I just have to chime in. I've said this for a while, that it's a cheaper way to advertise your fucking game is to give it to YouTubers, because you're giving them a $60 copy and they have the outreach of thousands upon thousands of people, whereas you're going to pay hundreds of thousands to get a commercial on TV or on YouTube. Who knows? But sorry, I just had to toss it out there.
Yeah.
No, that's a good point. The reason why I was quiet for so long is because I want to apologize to you guys. I'm the visitor, but I monopolized the starting, so I was sort of because I get
talk whenever you want.
This is why I created my channel, so it sort of pissed me off. But so I would say this: if it's part of their PR, then they failed spectacularly because they also changed their review timing. Those two can be in the same; they can coincide. You can still give your platform people the ability to play your title and still do reviews. We know that because we've actually seen it. So if Bethesda were to say that, I think they'd be openly flayed. That would be even worse if they said it's all just because we've changed to a slightly different advertising, because you wouldn't need to adjust your review time at all. So that would be very harsh. When it comes down to the situation and what Matty was saying and how his Skyrim thing, which the reason why my eyes were so big because I had not heard him. See. He didn't like, we don't talk about that kind of stuff because he doesn't want to get in trouble, either do I, but he hadn't mentioned that he was told no, which is, I think we are seeing that Bethesda did do it quite quickly, because normally he would have very distinct rules, which he's seen and there weren't, which is, I just got a game, I'm not going to say what game, 2 days ago, and it was like, here's the game, blah, 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 and I was all, whoa, wait, what, like, what do I do? And they were all, oh. And then they gave me this huge list, and I'm like, what can I do? Like, you guys don't seem like you're really together. And they said, well, we're making a change too because of Bethesda. So they're not the only. Bethesda's not the only one.
Here's my question: is what the fuck is the point of the change? I don't get that. What does this change accomplish for everyone? Is it just to withhold copies to get as many like day one purchasers who don't know that much about the game?
It's not even, guys. Like, okay.
Because my issue is that. Now you're saying that the game developer, or publisher rather, who wants the game to sell, is the marketer. They're going to show you the bright spots. They're going to show you all the fancy trailers and stuff. They are going to sell you what is good about the game. Whereas you have the media, the YouTubers, the Twitch streamers and stuff, which they said they're going to help out. I'm not talking about Bethesda specifically here, because they did say they'll help out with pre-launch coverage. But let's say there's not that many hands-on, which Fallout 4 didn't have. No hands-on before launch whatsoever. So you have a game that no one has touched, and Bethesda is the primary marketer for it. And then they're just selling you what they want to see. And once you have the game, they've made their money. So
yeah, I in all honesty, I mean,
could go a lot of ways.
It's just sad because I'm not trying to be overly negative here, but none of these companies care about you in particular, and they certainly don't care about if like I'm mad about it, or if Matty's mad about it, or if we love it. It is about money, and that's fine. It sort of goes back to what I said. One of the people on in the comments had said, where the idea of making games to make money has replaced making a game and making money. Like it's replaced. And so, I think when we're looking at a situation like this, one of the things they are betting on, and so okay, hang on. Let me make sure I do not say anything that breaks what I was told. Okay, so an ex publisher, an ex publishing employee. Okay, they worked for one of the big 6 companies.
One of the things by press or game dev.
By game publishers. They worked at a game publisher. Okay. Yeah. And their exact words, they're no longer in the industry. I think I can say that without giving up the information. Their exact words was this, and I told Matty this almost 6 months ago, I think in one of our Twitters. Their hope, the hope in many in the industry, is to call into question as openly and as often as possible any kind of review on a title. And there have been multiple discussions and multiple sort of trying to figure out how to do that. But the idea is to call into question final verdicts on titles so that there is a gulf of knowledge. And it's not labeled as a gulf of knowledge inside boardrooms, but it's sort of like the 1980s movies where they're like, you know what? Idiocracy, that kind of thing, where it's like, let's get them excited and put an X in front of extreme, and we'll get them excited about it, and we'll get them to buy it, and they won't know it's the same type of Mountain Dew they've always been buying. And one of the reasons why they left the industry was because of this, and the idea that over time, very quickly, there was going to be a pretty substantial shift towards a more towards the consumer basically being ultimately 100% responsible without any feedback loops. And I think that we're seeing that right now. And if you guys don't believe me, I talked about it 6 months ago on a podcast. So, I mean, this rumor had already been around back then, which is that was the hope by many publishing groups. How do you do that? How do you get people excited but not critical? And how you do that is with specific NDAs and Twitch and quick looks. Oh, by the way, do you you want to hear something nefarious? Quick looks are considered incredibly positive because they do not get you far enough into the game to see problems. And if you are like playing Mafia, you may go, man, this quick look, this game looks amazing. And guess what? Four hours later, you're going,
Mm-hmm.
And that was nefarious. And that was 2 different people where like quick looks have become incredibly popular amongst like the publisher push because that allows them to get hype without seeing any of the issues that may occur later on. And front loading of games has already happened. I don't know if you guys know that, but we can already see that. Front loading of content in games for the first 4 to 6 hours. I talked about this on Matty's podcast a couple months ago where they did a test to see who had finished the games, and it was like less than 2% of people had done so. So if you're only experiencing a truncated version, then you only do PR and advertisement for the truncated version, which is the smaller amount of the gameplay. And you make it look awesome. And you have your sale.
Yeah, and it also leads to discussions where you'll have someone, like you said, putting the question mark over the review, the final verdict, is that you'll have that review come out around the same time as all the consumers are playing it, and if it's front-loaded, they're going to come in and see your video. Let's say you beat it, you powered through it, whatever, and you're like, this game's, it's not that good, it starts strong. It's like a Mafia 3. It starts strong, but it tapers off, becomes a little repetitive. Then you have the people who are just playing, for lack of better words, casually. They're not reviewing it, so they can play at their own pace. And so they're like, I've only played 4 hours. This is fucking amazing. I don't know how the fuck he got repetitive from this. That's impossible. And so they hop in, and Carrick, I know you've seen these comments before. Lone, you definitely have with your reviews, and I certainly have that. I've only played about 5 hours, and I'm not sure what you're talking about because this game's amazing. I like this, and that, and it leads to those types of discussions where then you'll see the thread of a bunch of people going, yeah, I don't know where Matty got this from because I played it. And so I think that's another part of it is that when you have the critics and the consumers playing at the same time, you don't put the consumer in question at that. Or rather, if I'm the only one, along with a bunch of other people who played a certain title, reviewed it, and our reviews are out a couple of days before launch, they can only question us. Whereas the consumer how do I fucking word this?
No, I think what you're saying is basically if you're adjusting us to consumers. And so suddenly there's no ability for you to say, well, get 20 hours in and email me back, which is what I always post on whenever anybody says 5 hours in and I love it. I'm like, okay, 15 hours in, email me back, tell me what you think. And a lot of times people say, yeah, okay, about 10 hours in, I see what you mean. So what you're saying is there's an evening there, and there isn't another vision at the game. Everybody's looking at it the same way at the same time, which is exactly the opposite of a review, which is where some people have looked at it prior and said, here's the completion of the review. Remember again,
like you said, I complicated, but it brings into question the final verdict.
It does. It brings, and it's we know this. Well, some people know this for a fact that is unfortunately what a lot of people would like. Is and let's be honest, if people think this is some kind of Illuminati conspiracy, it's not. It's quite literally the advertising and PR in every industry. It's just that no one in other industries removes an entire review system like this. Like they might have a game or a song that they a track that they don't release because it's questionable, but they don't just say bah, 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 we're not doing anything anymore.
Yeah, you
whatever.
said you've taken part in the movie industry, for example. So you should probably toss that out there, because that was, I think, Lone, that was probably going to be one of your points, right? Is the difference between movies and games? Because I came out and said you don't really see this happening with movies. A lot of people said well, Suicide Squad. We should have explained this in the beginning, because a lot of people are getting embargoes and NDAs mixed up. Some guy was some guy was like, oh, dude, Suicide Squad is they blocked off something for that, and there weren't reviews for that. And I said, no, but there were early screenings multiple days or days before the launch of the movie. And then reviews popped up, I think, around the same time as launch time, which is fair. That's common for games, but that was not a completely blocked experience, where games are much longer than movies, where you can experience a movie day of and get your review out day of, because you have time to watch a 2-hour experience, digest that, and then have your thoughts later that night or the next day. With games, you can play for days and days and days and really not scratch the surface. So that's the big difference. That's why these advanced titles are so important. Not just for myself personally, if I don't get one, whatever, but because I'm, sometimes I get them, sometimes I don't. It's just important for the consumer, because they're informed at that point.
Yeah, and I guess I responded to your tweet because I wasn't exactly sure, because I have no idea about the movie industry, so pardon my ignorance here, because I wasn't sure how often movies were withheld from early screenings or advanced screenings, because they were worried about the quality of a movie, and as I soon found out that's probably the small minority of cases where movies are actually withheld.
I should have clarified, it does happen, but
I
don't think
just
it's like games.
So what if I was to say this, that the comparison between movies and games is made more often than it should be. Games are compared to movies because they're an entertainment medium, but that's only the really thing that they have in common. So just because movies have advanced screenings, shouldn't really reflect on the decision of a company like Bethesda to withhold copies to, a day before release. And at the end of the day, again, I'm playing devil's advocate. At the end of the day, they're still giving advanced copies to reviewers. It's just a day before, and it's the responsibility of a reviewer to do a thorough job at reviewing, and not trying to get views releasing a day of. And this decision only really affects consumers that pre-order or want to purchase maybe in the first week of a game.
I think they bring the association between themselves, because movies will make movies about games, Assassin's Creed, but games will also take inspiration from movies, and you'll have movie tie-in games, where I think because of that approach, where they are synonymous at times, that you'll see that comparison drawn in other mediums because of that, because they are associated with one another at times.
Well, because they're both entertainment.
But you'll see it in various areas, though. It's not just like I get entertainment out of a game and I get entertainment out of a movie, so let's look at the similarities on how they handle review processes. I think it's because they associate each other with themselves at times to increase sales for one another, like Star Wars Battlefront with Episode 7. Star Wars Battlefront sold 15 million copies, I think, even though they said that it didn't have legs, as in not a lot of people stayed for the long run, it still sold a bunch, probably due to the hype of Episode 7. They were like, fuck yeah, Star Wars is back. Fuck yeah, Battlefront's back. And boom. You got a bunch of sold copies there. So I think that's part of the reason there's an association between the two.
You know, do you know what makes me sad? That we have to ask. I hate any conversation or argument where you're culling out reasons because the initial problem has caused so many problems. It's like it's now it's like, well, what about this? Should we not talk about this? Okay, can we not add this? Can we add this? It's like, oh my God, it's something that is, if you ignore entertainment, I know people who test Sears wrenches, for Christ's sakes, prior to them going out. So every fucking item. No, I do. Like, at some point it's funny, but it's also inherently sad.
Yeah.
Because this is a situation where, like, other industries, I remember when I was talking to the producer I told you guys about, he literally laughed at it. He was like, that is just, it's embarrassing. Like, and that's somebody who's not in games. He's like, and I mean a music producer, by the way. He was just laughing at it, going like, man, some of this shit's like, what are you guys doing? Like, how does that even happen? Like, how does it happen? And then when you start to talk about it, it starts getting dumber and dumber. Like, it's like now we're 7 degrees of Kevin Bacon reasons why this is like, and by the way, I'm not dissing on our conversation. I'm saying it's just sort of sad because I know people are going to be pissed at some of the stuff I said, but even when I say it's just because I want consumers, all consumers, gamers love to be insular and they like to pretend that they're the only consumer that matters. I'm talking about all consumers. So if somebody says they don't wait, as I told Maddie, you're out of the conversation. Great, no problem. You pick how to buy games on your own, but some people do use reviews. And
that's the main argument, though. They're like, oh, I do research myself. This doesn't impact me. It impacts others.
It does, because the money goes into the same pot. Additionally, you know, the first day, it's everything else has reviews, and they did remove it. I mean, in the end, that's what happened, and it sucks. Like, at some point, you just have to sit back and be like, there's no argument for it. There's only ways in which to soften the blow. And as I stated, 20 fucking plus years in the business, I can tell you right now, if I walked into a boardroom, my boss's office, and I talked like this, they would say the initial problem lies with what you removed. I mean, anybody in business would look at that and say, no. You need, and by the way, one of them was education for 8 years, where it looked at like education programs for students and teachers and course audits and all that kind of stuff. If we had this kind of situation where we were having this kind of discussion, they would all continue to go, well, what's the source of the problem? Like, why are we talking about all the, and I would say the source of the problem, they'd be like, whoa, wait, well, that literally makes no sense. And the source of the problem would be what was rectified, not all of these soft bullshit rules around it. And the fact is we've lost. That's so, like, I'm depressed because I know I've lost. Yeah. Like, they've done it, right? They're not going to magically reverse it. I mean, unless a Twitter campaign started up. A DRM for the Xbox One is the only one I can think of where a Twitter campaign effectively reversed it. I just don't think that'll happen.
I want to bring up an argument here, again, not because I believe in it, but I feel like we need to nip this in the bud right now. A lot of people are saying, from comments that I'm reading, that the only people that really care about the decision are greedy YouTubers that want the game for free and want it early. And I just want to quickly put as a side note, we can't live off getting free video games, for fuck's sake. But I just want to say that, you know, what's wrong with this? You know, it's greedy YouTubers. They want the game early. They want the game for free. So what's wrong with Bethesda withholding it to a day before?
Here, I'll be really honest about one part. It's great getting early games, and it's great getting them free. But here's the thing. I fucking buy them anyway. So getting them for free doesn't matter to me, because I am grateful as fuck either way, but most of the time I am buying it. So that doesn't make a difference to me.
Yeah, I get the perspective. Title, so
I get the perspective that it looks like, and that's why I mentioned this earlier in the podcast when it first started. It was like, we're not arguing for ourselves. You know, we get our games our own ways because it's not only a passion, but it is also part of the job. So we find a way to get games regardless if they're free or not. We'll pay, and I'm sure, Carrick, I don't know if you, for your retail stores, if you had to pay extra, Yeah. So for us, I'm gonna have to find a retail source. What?
By the way, oh, dude.
Yeah, they hike it up.
It's not a little extra.
I've heard. Like, I remember my friend wanted Call of Duty early, and he had to pay $300.
I would not doubt, in any way, shape, or form, that some of the channels, especially some of the YouTuber channels, I'm not going to say who, but there's a couple that are well known, and they are always playing games early, and they're breaking NDA constantly. But they're huge channels, and I can guarantee you that there are multiple thousands, by the way, of dollars changing hands for a single title, without any shadow of a doubt. It is absolutely. And the thing is, we know, like I said, we know these companies will continue to do this kind of stuff as well. I think when you treat, I think Bethesda wants to say a certain thing about reviewers. I think those reviewers at some point, and we've seen Polygon do this, they're just going to treat them back. And that bothers me more than anything. I don't necessarily think Polygon should say, I'm going to go find a retail source, or a Kotaku. Who does? And they've stated it right in their reviews that we had to go get I don't think that's awesome. I think, and myself included, I don't really necessarily think that's awesome. Like, to me, it's another soft fix for a problem that inherently any other normal organization would look at and be like, no, wait, no. And you know what I think? If people have a problem with reviewers, like somebody has a problem with IGN, I told this to Maddie, I think it would be awesome if they rotated reviewers. Great. If you have a problem with IGN, that's awesome, because the next game Bethesda releases, they're picking 10 random YouTubers and giving them the game. Like, I would have no problem with that. I
think in terms of reviewers,
that'd be great.
I always, recommend to people, never, unless you really trust them, but even in that case, never just follow the opinion or thoughts of one reviewer. Yep, always exactly. Look at a consolidated view, because that way you're going to get people on either side of the extremes. Get people that just hate the game, people that really like the game, and everyone in between. That's the only way that you're going to get a sense of, the quality of a game. And this is kind of a reason why I simply don't like review scores in general, because boiling down a game to a review score is kind of pointless. It doesn't represent anything. There's no scale or guide to, guide that decision. As Carrick mentioned before, when a reviewer, Maddie and Carrick say, oh, there's this bug, but they give a different review scores. The important thing is not the review scores, it's the fact that they mentioned that there was a bug.
Yep,
and
exactly.
in terms of reviews, look at a number of different sources, look at actually what they're saying. But this is the last devil's advocate point that I'm going to mention here. What if I was to say that this is Bethesda doing a business decision and it's their right and they're doing it to make money, and if you were in their position, you would have done the exact same thing? What would you say about that?
I'd agree.
Yeah.
The agreement of a business decision isn't the same. There's a reason why there's business ethics. So there's entire colleges based around it. This calls into question, good and bad. But the fact is, if there was no reviews in the past and they didn't start them, I would feel different than now the fact that there are reviews and they're stopping them. There's a huge difference. But I would totally agree. Because I don't think anybody thinks it's a bad business. Like, it's a great business decision. David Martinez from Raw Fury Games did an entire Twitch yesterday about this. And he was like, it's one of the worst decisions morally and ethically he had ever seen in the games industry. But financially, it's balls on.
Yep, exactly.
I would agree.
It's a good business decision. This isn't the first we've seen of that in the games industry, where there has been a questionable consumer decision that is absolutely a good financial decision. A good example of that is what Konami's done. They are making a lot of money despite the fact that they canned Kojima, and they are really not doing Metal Gear aside from that new Metal Gear game they're doing. People are like, oh, they're doing fucking pachinko machines. Fuck them. They're gonna go bankrupt. They're making tons of money.
DLCs, microtransactions. Those are all business decisions that might not be the best for the gamer.
Yeah, but they're making a lot of money.
We don't want that, though. Like, I can say it's a good business decision, but like all of us on this podcast, it's bad for the industry. That's what, like, as in morally, ethically, and for the customer. So it can be, it's almost like, is stealing okay for you financially? Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Let's just all fucking steal. Like, that's awesome. If somebody said that to me, that's the answer I would give. I'd be like, dude, that's fucking great. I'm going to steal from everybody because it's a good business decision. But at the same time, I want to apologize. Anybody who gets this far and thinks I'm being an asshole or something like that, you're absolutely right. I certainly am when it comes to making sure that consumers have as much information as possible. And so I apologize if people feel like I've belittled a stance. I absolutely have, and that's on purpose, but it doesn't mean I'm belittling you. I'm just, I just have an issue, and it comes across really strong. But
yeah, I'm the same way though.
It kills my soul just a little bit to hear this. So
yeah, no, I'm definitely the same. That I got very into it. So yeah, if anyone out there who's listened this far, you've probably left your comment and left by now. But if you have listened this far, number one, kudos to you.
Yeah, kudos.
But number two is that for anyone who has listened this far, yeah, I'm not, as Carrick said, belittling anyone, whether you're just a casual gamer or you review games in your spare time, or this doesn't affect you at all and you're just listening for fun. Not belittling you. We just want to talk about how this impacts the consumer, how this impacts Bethesda, how this impacts the industry. So
hopefully we've tried to be as fair as possible and cover both sides of the argument. So
you know what's? I have a question for you guys. Can now both of you? So we're done with the devil's advocate. And I don't mean I want you to agree with me, by the way. This is just a question. Do you think this is a situation that deserves even being talked about fairly? And what I mean by fair is the typical PC version of here's a wizard and here's a Democrat on the same panel. Do we think, is this a situation that deserves like some kind of, I mean, and let's ignore what Twitter, I'm sure people are going to get mad because I'm even asking this. But like, I'm having I'll just say this. I'm having a crisis of conscience, which I normally don't have. And my crisis is I can't see that there's a reason to be fair about this because there is no fair return to the consumer. Regardless if you don't care about reviews, the fairness has not been returned to us. Why do we have to be fair about it? In our version of fair, I guess. Do you guys, am I completely the only one who believes that and just is like...
Well, now you mention it, you make a good point. I never thought of it that way. I think it's because you have the argument being put up is usually like the entitlement one. Bethesda's a business. They're going to do what they want. So what? Oh, it doesn't affect me. Those types of ones where it just kind of wears down a little bit to, okay, I have to level the playing field. Let's... here's my perspective. Sure. Here's the other perspective. Let's counter each other. Let's talk about that. And I think that's how a lot of game discussions either evolve or devolve, where you really have a point that shouldn't have to be defended or discussed fairly because it's very clear it's one-sided. But you do so anyway to cater to the either silent or the vocal minority or possible majority who has said that perhaps maybe you didn't think of this. Like I said, one of the first things I got was, hey, dude, you're entitled to games and you're egotistical. I was just like, come on, don't fucking try that. Like,
well, for me, it's a little different for me because I come from a legal background and a law background. So I'm mentally wired to think on both sides of the argument. The fact is that out of law school, I could have gone and defended a murderer or prosecuted a murderer. And I need to think about both sides of the argument. Otherwise, I just lose my shit like internally. So that's the way I've been brought up. That's the way I've studied at law school. I need to be able to think critically about both sides of the argument because that's the only way that you can combat those other arguments. So that's just that's the kind of the internal approach that I've been taking. And also as well, I think a lot of our viewers do appreciate that we do try and be as fair and cordial as possible. But I made my
thing on YouTube is that if you're not fair, if you're not stating both sides of the argument, then you show possible bias, you show closed-mindedness, you show weakness. Like, I mean, you'll just get ripped for it. So it's better just to, even if it's not necessary, which I've had discussions on my channel where I've thought to myself before the recording, I don't fucking need to state this one side of the argument because my personal belief is this is fucking dumb. But I'll still mention it and still rationally discuss that part because, quite honestly, I think that's how you have a fair discussion where even if it shouldn't be fair, I think the fair part is acknowledging both sides of the case, like you mentioned.
But yeah, as I mentioned at the start, when I had Fallout 4 several weeks early, it helped me make a better review. And again, even though there is the argument that, well, reviewers should just wait, the fact is that, you know, it helped me, so I'd be hypocritical to say, well, a day, you know, is fine. Like I would have preferred a week or something, but in any event.
Yeah, I mean, same here. Getting Skyrim as a most recent example, 2 weeks early.
And I didn't get Skyrim 2 weeks early, so there we go.
Someone actually,
when
I posted a
picture
on Instagram, he's like, "Are you gonna tell Lone?" I was like, I think he already knew, but yeah,
That's brilliant.
you know, for that, I mean, it definitely makes time where I can. For example, when it was like with me with Fallout 4 and it got sprung on me and I had to play and beat the game in a weekend, a big game like Fallout 4 in a weekend, compared to Skyrim, a arguably bigger game, which I had 2 weeks to toy around with, and you know, I got something to do today. All right, I'll do that today because I have 2 weeks. It makes a big difference. I'm not asking for 2 weeks before launch with any game I review because I'll admit that having a game sprung on you is like the worst feeling. It's just that, like you said, I'd be hypocritical to say that it does not make a difference because it does. Having that time to review a game is important, but I think what's more important than the initial review itself is actually the digestion process, is what I call it for gaming. Is when you beat it, you'll walk away being like, wow, and then
let your thoughts marinate.
Yeah, and then you think about it for a little bit. You wake up the next day and you think, all right, how did that age? And you think about it the next day. How was that? And so
and to be honest, I mean, and it's not just that what you said, Matty. I mean, it's for example, me 6 months later after my Fallout 4 review, watching it and thinking, what the fuck was I thinking? That was stupid, Lone.
You know what's weird?
Guilty as charged.
It's crazy because now getting an idea of how you guys work versus me, I don't believe in marination at all. Okay. I think and so I have never looked back on a review and said, what was I thinking? But that's because, and again, Maddie and I are different people, obviously, and have different, should this conversation be fair? If it was on my channel, I'd be like, if somebody wants to talk fair, sure, but we wouldn't go out of our way to make sure. Like, if we all believed it was a bad idea, I would go find somebody who thought, lighting people on fire was a good idea. Like, I'd be like, and that's hyperbole on purpose.
Yeah.
So it's weird to hear that. It's weird to hear that you guys, and not weird in a bad way. It's very cool to hear that you guys have that marinated, because I think I've told Matt what I do when I play is I make mental note, if not on a paper, jokes, goofy things that I'm thinking, and then I quite literally hit record when I'm done with the game. Like, I literally walk over to my audio and go, "Sup, everybody, this is Carrick with ACG, and welcome to another," and so to see that difference is really interesting to me. And I think that's why it's fun when we get on the same. I think that's why it's fun when we're like talking about KOTOR or something, because like we may both like it for different reasons, but I'm more of like, I do it one way, you do it another, and it's cool to see like how we think.
And the thing is, it's important to have both of those sides, right? It's important to be able to hear thoughts. Yeah, it's important to be able to hear thoughts about a game instantly after you finish it, because at the end of the day, that's when the feelings about the game in your head are most intense. I mean, to give an example,
I question myself, I guess, maybe.
Yeah, well, to give an example, and I love mentioning this game, but I'll mention at the end of BioShock Infinite, for example. I'll do it, right?
I do it.
But, like I was like shaking at the end of it. Like I was so emotion filled because of the story about that game. But I thought that if I was to, I didn't do reviews back then, but if I was to have done a review as soon as I finished that game, I would have been like, wow, I feel so moved. This is so emotional. But to try and be a bit more critical of the game in areas where it probably should have been a bit more critical, I think it would have made sense for me to have waited a couple of days or so to think, all right, now what do I think about the game? Oh, you're right. There were glitches about that. Oh, you're right. There was this one boss, which was the ghost lady, that was kind of crappy. So, you know what I mean?
The thing with reviewing games, though, is that a lot of people forget, and this is one good thing that will come out of Bethesda's policy, I will say, is that you won't have a Fallout 4 again. And by that, I mean you will not have a game that is critically incredibly well received, because in the condensed environment, I will never forget it, how fucking good Fallout 4 was. I fucking love the game. I still love the game, but I'm saying at that point, I was, like I said in the review title that you guys joke about, near perfect. I was like, this is fucking amazing. Yeah. The game comes out, it's out for a month. Public gets their hands on it. It got exposed hard for its flaws that were not that betrayed the very series it is named after. Very little role playing, very little choice consequence. And that's stuff that you can't see in a 200-hour game in a review period of time, which now, with Bethesda's review policy, I will say that will be something that I think will improve, because all these giant 200-hour RPGs, you don't know who's reviewing the game. You don't know. I mean, Carrick's probably the only guy I can consistently go to and be reviewing a game and say, like, hey, what do you think about this, or that, and bounce off some ideas before launch to kind of talk some things out. But that's about as far as it goes, where it's different, where you have a game like Fallout 4, 20 million copies sold, where it's going to get exposed like that. So that's one thing I do want to say in defense of Bethesda's review policy, is that it'll definitely benefit them.
Counterpoint.
Or benefit the consumer to some degree.
Let's put another counterpoint here.
I have one real quick. They're all going to do. I don't see that happening, because they already, prior to this, have been doing retail copies. I don't see.
True.
There's nothing changing. I know what you.
You're right. No, you're right.
I didn't mean to let you go on, but
No, you're totally right though.
Every website so far has said they for sure have done retail versions. So what you want is an awesome future, right? What you want is this awesome thing. But I also have to say this. I don't know if your review is better or worse just because you didn't critique it and destroy it after millions of man hours looked at it. Because here's the thing. A game has to sit up against 65 reviewers, right? One game. Pretty crazy. But now you consider that each reviewer takes in their history of multiple games, let's say 100 different games it's being judged against. So now you have 6,500 games in which Fallout 4, and this is not an exaggeration, this is something you can easily study and understand, 6,500 games are being compared to one. I'm not 100% sure I would expect Matty to figure out every single thing the industry's consumers would figure out. What I'm looking at Matty's review to show me is whatever Matty has shown in the past as being his strong points for pointing out in reviews.
Good point. That's a fantastic point.
Yeah. True. So I'm very nervous. I'm very nervous people will, God damn, no developer would want to make a game. Imagine being a developer and being like, oh shit, 65,000 fucking games are being reviewed against our one. And instead, I think I watch Matty's because Matt looks at things differently. And so I think that's a strength, not something I want to go away.
Yeah,
and that's
and for me that was just more a selfish discussion bit, I guess, about the consumer and reviewer kind of going at the same pace.
But that is a good point though, and it touches back on the thing that I mentioned before about watching different reviewers. I mean, when I go to Total Biscuit, for example, here's, I guess, I don't want to say agenda, it's a very poor term, but his channel is about, defending the consumer, trying to point out, technical issues with games, etc. When you go to Total Biscuit, that's what you're getting, and right. You might not get a discussion about story, with Total Biscuit as you might with other YouTubers or other reviewers that put more of an emphasis on story or like story a little bit more than gameplay, for example. So again, listening and watching different reviewers is really the only way you're going to get a sense of the entirety of the game.
Yeah. Yeah.
But if you found a reviewer that has the same interests as you, the same likes as you, that views games in a similar way to you do, then that's probably the reviewer that you want to watch the most. Because if they say a game is good and they liked it, chances are you'll like it and you'll think that game is good. But Total Biscuit might have a differing opinion to you. So reviews are a tricky process, to say the least.
Yeah, it's cool too because I know a lot of people. I'm going to be just really honest here. I would say one of my major video successes was Technomancer, which isn't a great game, but it's an okay game. And Total Biscuit was too busy looking at bugs and stuff, and so he didn't understand. He didn't understand the comment, and I got flooded with subscribers. People were like, "Holy shit, you did the comment!" And I'm like, "Well, I was reviewing the game." And one person had stated that, I think one problem that some reviewers can get into, including myself, it's something I'm always watching for. Yeah. Is you might be known for something, but you don't want to be known for something. Because
exactly.
that can cause you to focus just a little bit. And it's, we hear it, believe your own hype, whatever. It's one of the reasons why I step back sometimes, and people are always like, why are you reviewing a 2D game? Like, how dare you? A 2D game like Earth Dawn or whatever. I'm like, whoa, wait. Like, to me, that's the refresher, right? That's like the palate cleanser. And it's something so different. And then I'm going to review, by the way, I'm going to drop a game that everybody should buy. It's called Contradiction. It's a FMV game, detective game that came out last year. Fantastic. And people are just blown away that I reviewed it. I'm like, that's how you do things, though. Like, that. Yeah. You should look at everything. You don't want to get too caught up in it. And that's not a diss on Total Biscuit. But that does show that looking at different people, even if you do follow one, Maddie's done it and I have, where somebody will be like, I can't believe we disagree, I'm unsubscribing. And I'm like, please do. Because if you think that I agree with Cadiz, who's on my channel all the time, I will say this. We disagree more than we agree on games. He understands where I come from. But that dude and I, man, you should hear us sometimes. It's like two old women where it's just like, what the fuck? You like, and I lay into him. I'll be like, what do you mean you like that? And he's like, well, it's blah, blah, blah. That's good. Like, all reviewers don't have to be the same. Like, yeah, man, go out there and find somebody, and don't expect to agree with them all the time. Maddie's seen it. I saw one on Maddie where somebody was like, "Yeah, I can't believe you gave this." It was on Forza. Like, how dare you review a racing game, or you're reviewing racing games now? And I was like, whoa, what the fuck up, man?
It was like, game's a game, dude.
Yeah, a game's a game. And you do want people like Maddie, who doesn't play a lot of racing games, to review them. Because I have somebody I have somebody coming on my podcast, and this will be his first console ever. And I always tell this to people when they ever bitch about my Far Cry Primal review. They'll be like, well, it's just a reskinned Far Cry. And I'll say, guess what? Many people haven't played Far Cry before. So I don't care about that. I care about how is Primal. And this guy got into games because of Primal. And he was like, dude, that game, like, I've never thought of video games. He just bought an Xbox One. He's playing Primal right now. And I love that. New people. Maddie, review a fucking fighting game. Like, that would be awesome. And even though he said he's playing Exoverse or whatever.
It's so refreshing that you bring that up, because I think this is an internal struggle that I don't think there's a clear answer to this, because on one side of the argument, when someone reviews a game, they might review the game in the context of every single game in that franchise that has come out before that point. And then someone else reviews a game not really having played that genre recently, not really having played the previous games in that franchise. And so those two different perspectives result in very, very two different reviews, but they each serve a purpose. One serves a purpose for someone that is a fan of that series. So let's take Assassin's Creed, and we'll take, Assassin's Creed 3, for example. Someone might standalone review Assassin's Creed 3 and think that's a great game. Someone else might review that game in the context of Assassin's Creed 1, 2, Brotherhood, etc., and think that it doesn't really add much more. But each of those reviews serve a purpose, because not everyone's going to be new to the game, and not everyone's going to be a fan of the game and haven't played the previous games. That's the point of looking at different reviews and perspectives.
Yeah, and speaking of Assassin's Creed, I can attest to that, because I'm pretty sure Brotherhood came out between 2 and 3, correct?
Yeah.
And I never played at the time Brotherhood. I played 2. I didn't play Assassin's Creed for a while, and then 3 showed up. And 3 is still my favorite Assassin's Creed, funny enough, because even though it had a very slow start, I think it was the strongest one in terms of gameplay mechanics and narrative and things to do. Right. And so I think part of that was because I had that time where I didn't play 1, which made my opinion differ from a lot of other people who played 2, Brotherhood, then 3. They didn't have that brief stint to forget about Assassin's Creed, to play other things, and then miss it for a little bit and then pick up 3. Which is one thing Todd Howard has said a lot that I think our listeners can appreciate, is that he says it's important to miss a game. He says you want to not just keep pumping them out. You want to miss that game, because then it's more special when you're playing it. And it's true.
But he's also speaking to a particular fan, though. There are fans who like Forza 6 because it's got 6 after it. So, there's different fans. It's funny. When I do reviews, I have what's called an introduction section and then a inspection section. And the reason why I do that, or investigation section, the reason why I do that is because I try to cover the game from a newcomer and from somebody if it's got some prior mechanic, or if it's number 6 in a title. And the reason why I created that was because a lot of my friends, just got into games. And you do have to cover it. You do have to look at it, because like Maddie said, if you're looking at Assassin's Creed 3, I know a person who played it. They were a history professor, and they played it and did a YouTube walkthrough, and it was fantastic. And basically all it was him talking about history. And it was just like, I mean, he's like, and no lie, man. He's like, and this house, it's actually sort of where I got the idea of my Walking the Walk videos, where I talk about artistic representation in games instead of like however
historical references and stuff.
Yeah, and that's why in my Walking the Walks I do a little less technical stuff, and it's more like, this is cool here because it fits in here. And he was just walking through it, and a lot of people are like, "You're not playing well," and I'm all, "Oh my god!" Like, you've missed the entire reason for him. It's a newcomer, and we need to celebrate that. We need to celebrate like people's difference of opinions, on the way a game is. And I agree with Todd. I see what he's saying, but at the same time, if you told me next year we're going to get KOTOR 1, 2, 3, and 4, and Forza 7, and Forza Horizon 4, my honest opinion would be this: if it is a good game, I don't give a fuck what the number is after it.
True.
And I am not like a lot of people, so I know that that's not normal.
You mean people getting mad that it's called Red Dead Redemption 2?
Did you guys watch my video where I purposely called it 3? I got death threats for that. So in my in my video I start out saying, "Hi everybody, this is Carrick with ACG, and today I'm going to do a preview on the trailer that just came out, Red Dead Redemption 3." And people shat them. They were so mad. And I was like, dude, it was just a joke because it's technically like the third
Red Dead game, but it's
or the one where I dropped where I said that the son in Gears of War 4, the son of Marcus, and or son of Dom. I said it was the son of Dom, which it's the son of Marcus. But I had a huge font that said, "We are not allowed to tell any story parts or put any." Remember the embargo, Maddie? It was pretty crazy. It was like you cannot.
Yeah, there's like use specific B-roll gameplay before launch, and then after that do campaign gameplay. I was just like, what the fuck?
And they had like 8 bullet points about not ruining the story. So I decided I was going to joke about a fake story spoiler.
The fate of this person, the fate of this person, the reveal of this. I'm like, oh my God.
I said the guy was Dom's son, and people could not figure out the joke. I mean, you would not believe. I left this video the moment he said Dom's son, and I'm like, there's a fucking yellow font that's like this big, talking about goofy stories.
That's the hardest part about doing reviews, is that people don't fully listen. They don't. It's a sad truth. Not all of them. I'm not speaking for everyone, but I think my Skyrim review is a fucking great example just in the past 24 hours.
I just watched it.
How dudes don't fucking listen. And I'm like sitting there mind blown. Matty fucking hates Skyrim. I'm like, are you deaf? That's what I said to someone. I'm like, are you deaf? That's all I asked. I was like, are you fucking deaf? Because I literally say in the first minute, I love Skyrim so much. It's great to be back. I fucking love this game. It's so big. There's so much to do. And if you're new, you got to get in on this shit. But if you haven't played it, you shouldn't buy this game because
you know what it is. It's not just people being hardcore fans. It's also a lot of people that maybe they pre-ordered, maybe they purchased it, that are looking to validate their own purchase, right? And they'll look at people to
all right, there you go, validated. Fucking ridiculous.
Yeah. I know.
My God. And I get it because
that's why reviews are a tricky process.
I get it because I've done it not to validate my purchase, but I'll love a game that I haven't watched reviews on. I'll say, I wonder what, the press thinks about this. I wonder what other YouTubers think about this. And I will watch reviews. I get that perspective because I think that's an interesting point of view of watching a review. What I don't get is when I clear as fuck say I like or don't like something and you fucking tell me I didn't say it or something like that. Or Matty can't make up his mind about Skyrim because he says he likes it and doesn't like it. I'm like, bruh, you're new. I said that you should buy it.
People watching are not the people he's talking about because you're watching this, which indicates you're already got through a bunch of fucking crazy shit. So don't take it personally because it's not even calling him like saying, "Are you deaf?" Whatever. That's just a reaction. He's obviously not being a jerk. What happens is it calls into question what else the person didn't hear as well, and that's what Matty's saying is like when you're like, wait a minute, you didn't hear the very first, then how far have you watched? No, I watched it all. Well, what else didn't you listen to? Because and that's so in no way, shape, or form is anybody dissing on anybody here. In fact, those type of people many times are like everybody's saying here are a little bit trying to make sure the purchase is validated and that they're not worried about something and that this game's going to turn out good.
Not missing something,
Yeah, and sometimes that focus can cause you to miss stuff. So you're so focused on like what a score is or what somebody's saying in a certain point, you might miss the other stuff or a joke. I was particularly harsh on people missing my joke, but if I have to explain a joke, technically, you do have the saying that if you have to explain a joke, it's not very funny.
And I think a good way to, I think a good way to wrap up the whole Bethesda review code policy thing is like I saw an article on Polygon that says this is why you shouldn't pre-order games. And to that I'll say, make your own decision. Okay, if you want to pre-order a game, pre-order a game. If you want to wait and listen to reviews and watch reviews, then listen and watch reviews. Don't let anybody dictate to you, what you should be doing. Hear different perspectives, be influenced in that way, and then come to your own decision. And if you decide, even though the reviews are being withheld to a day before, that you want to pre-order or purchase on day one, then do that. And if you want to wait, then wait. At the end of the day, the power is in your hands to protect yourself.
For me, I take with games a very case-by-case approach. I've realized that it's not just, I have my set stances on certain things, but I go case-by-case where I look at it this way: if like news keeps rolling out of Bethesda and I consistently praise them, I'll notice the responses. I'm a fanboy. If I go the other way and I'm like, I don't like this that much, then people react in that general, because the reason I'm mentioning that is because it's a very immediate environment that we're in nowadays, where people will. I'm trying to think of how exactly to word this.
I think to try and exemplify that, I mean, I remember once Boogie tweeted out that in one video he was claimed to be both I think it was like a Microsoft fanboy and against Microsoft in the very same video. Like, I guess the thing is, people hear what they want to hear, and if they think you're a Bethesda fanboy because you say positive things, and they're going to believe that. And then when you say negative things, just because he covers both sides of the argument doesn't mean he's one way or the other. I mean, he's just covering both sides of the argument.
Yeah, exactly. This is what I was trying to get to, but I had another point that escaped me, because this is what happens when these podcasts go on. It's when it hits the hour and a half point. Literally, once it hits it, my brain shuts off. I think it's ridiculous. So, if you guys quickly want to just breeze over if we're playing any games, quickly talk about that for the long-term listeners. Yeah, you're playing Skyrim. Are you liking it this time around?
So I played like 2 to 3 hours. Like, my problem is, and it's not just with Skyrim, it's me personally. I can't seem to sit down and play a game. I have that block that I'm sure many gamers go through, where they just can't play a game and finish a game, and just can't sit down and do that. So I'm trying to get over that hurdle, and I'm using Skyrim to do that, to say I'm not going to play any other games. I'm not going to try and start one and finish another or whatever. I'm just going to play this game and try and get over that personal block of mine.
I feel you. Yeah, I had that. Actually, last time I had that was until Fallout 4 came out, and I was like rejuvenated, and like I haven't looked back since. But I feel you. What about you, Carrick? You playing anything?
Nothing that he can talk about.
That isn't an embargo.
No, it's I don't want to repeat what I've said a couple things. I'm playing Deadly Tower of Monsters again, which is free on PSN.
I remember you saying that.
One of the best games of that year for sure. It's fantastic. Like it's like Flash Gordon run through the Gauntlet video games. It's crazy good. And let's see what else I've been playing. I'm gonna play a little bit more Earth Dawn. Even though it's not Odin Sphere with guns like it wants to be, it's got some good points. And then let's see what else. Honestly, man, I've been sort of out of the loop for the last couple days because I'm teaching. I got some new students for martial arts, so I haven't really been doing as many games. I'm trying to think. Yeah, do you know what I'm stoked for though? I'm just gonna say this. I mean, literally stoked for Dead Rising, the new. I
watched the trailer. Yeah, looks cool.
I can't wait. So, in all honesty, I'm playing the watch some trailers and bone up on Dead Rising kind of.
I have to ask, because I'm someone that I'm not a fan of Dead Rising, and I don't necessarily get the appeal of it. And I think I'd like to hear the opinion of someone that obviously you seem to like Dead Rising. What is it about Dead Rising that you like? Because for me, at some point, it just got kind of repetitive when I played it on Xbox One.
Yeah, sure. So Dead Rising, let's be honest though, it's a different game than it was. So the original Dead Risings, which are Capcom classic style titles, are more of the a little quirky. They've got some weird, boss mechanics to them. They've got those bosses you can defeat after one hit if you know what you're doing. Weird stuff like that, right? Yeah. So Dead Rising 1 and 2 were more that. Cold Case, whatever. Dead Rising 3 is more of a people are going to get mad, but it's more of a Twitch style, let's show it to everybody style of game. Dead Rising 3 is. I'm also okay with that. It's a lot of Armageddon, co-op. it's a game where you and I can jump into it and just fucking go nuts without any real feedback or skill required. That's the honest truth.
Mm-hmm.
Like it's more about destroying as much as possible. So Dead Rising is just, it's just a part. It's a playground, and it's not what it was. It's not what it was. So I don't know if you liked it originally and then don't like it, or what titles you played, but it has changed substantially since number one. Like it's almost a different series. It's like what is it? Not BioShock. Biohazard. Resident Evil.
Oh, okay.
You know how Resident Evil's seen some massive changes.
Oh yeah,
it's like that.
I've been rolling through them. I actually, like I've said on the podcast, you know, I've played. I have not played 4, but I've played 5, played 6, and then you look at 7. It's like, what the fuck is going on?
Exactly. It is exactly, that is the greatest way to see those differences. Is that if you liked Resident Evil, depending on which one you liked, what you're playing now.
Yeah, it's insane that, because you look at 4, survival horror, 5, little action packed, but still, you know, you can't move while you shoot. 6 is like third-person action-adventure shooter. Gears of War. This cover-based shooting. It's insane.
Yeah, it's Gears of Hazard, as we called it in our review.
And then BioShock. BioShock, Jesus Christ.
Sorry, I call them.
I've got everyone saying it.
Sorry.
And then Resident Evil 7 is like the first-person horror survival, like VR now. It's like, what the fuck is happening?
Jeez.
Anyway, the game I'm playing this week is Dragon Ball Xenoverse 2.
How is that? I mean, I'm a Dragon Ball fan, but I've never, like, my friend was a really big Dragon Ball, game fan, but I've more watched the anime and I'm happy with that.
So have you played any Dragon Ball games?
Budokai Tenkaichi. I can't remember the number at the end of it.
All right, so yeah, if it was like 2,
classic ones.
If it was like 2, you played the right one. But Budokai Tenkaichi, like all those are really good. Raging Blast is okay. Xenoverse, the first one was like really good because it was a fresh take, because you know you're time traveling and there's different things happening in these famous story arcs that we've seen again and again and again with Dragon Ball games and this anime as well. That it was really refreshing to have a new story for Dragon Ball.
I mean, that's the one gripe that I had. I remember when I was playing Dragon Ball games, that in the story modes, it was always the same arcs being told over and over again. I'm just like, holy shit, I've watched the anime many times and played the games, and now it's the same thing. That's boring.
Yeah.
Sorry.
And so, no, you're fine, because that's the problem Xenoverse 2 has, where there are some bright moments. Yeah, but it's like they used up all their good ideas on the first one.
Yeah.
And the second one, it's still fun, but it's still the same. You got your clothing shop, accessory shop, skill shop. You're leveling up your own character that you customize in the beginning. Great soundtrack, awesome art style. You're running missions. You can play online with your friends.
It's like the various versions of Phantasy Star that came out that were online. It's like each one was released, and you were like, it's a little different.
Yeah,
you know.
But like, this isn't. I'm talking like Call of Duty. Oh, it's the same formula. Like, this is literally Dragon Ball Xenoverse 1. With like a couple of things here and there. Like, it's really the same game. What's cool though is that the story, they took like one step forward with the time travel stuff, where you'll see random characters appear in fights. Like when Goku's fighting Frieza in that big one-on-one fight, Cooler randomly appears in the story and helps out Frieza, and then you appear to help out against Cooler and Frieza.
That's cool.
So yeah, it's stuff like that that's really cool, but those moments are few and far between. So that's the issue. One thing they did fix, though, I will give them credit, is that for those who have played Xenoverse, you'll know that there was a lot of grinding to get all the skills and equipment that you wanted, and it was all like RNG. It was just randomly dropped for you, and they finally fucking got rid of that shit. Well, actually, I wouldn't say got rid of it, but you're guaranteed to get something new each time, which means that you're probably going to at max run a mission 2 or 3 times if you want to get everything, which I know sounds a little redundant, a little tedious, but in Xenoverse 1, you'd run it like 8 times and not get what you needed. So you could say it's the lesser of two evils, but for me, running a mission a second time is fine. Not a problem. That's if you're a completionist. If not, you can just keep rolling through. But it's not a bad game. It's for Dragon Ball fans, though. And if it's like I say, with all reviews, if you're like a newcomer, then Xenoverse 2 is a good place to start, absolutely. which I think is what they aimed it for, because Xenoverse 1 I think sold well because they're making a second one. So, but yeah, that's what I'm playing. I guess it's time to wrap up the podcast, right?
Yeah. I think we can forego on fan questions. I mean, that was a pretty long discussion.
Yeah. Yeah, that was ridiculous. Kudos to us. We're talkative.
I hope you don't get like, yeah. I hope people understand.
The way I view it is that we made it clear in the beginning we're not biased on this topic. We made it clear what our stance was. We made it clear that like our business relationship with Bethesda does not affect what we're thinking. We made all that pretty clear. Like at that point, it's just a clash of personal opinions, which happens in every video, and I've just kind of accepted that shit's gonna happen. People are gonna complain either way. You know, so we'll see how it goes. It'll probably piss people off.
Crossed.
Yeah, it'll probably piss people off, but we're trying to be as rational as possible. If we've done what we can, then it's kind of out of our hands, I feel.
And I'm okay being the unrational one, so we're good on this.
You're always welcome to be the unrational one on the podcast.
Yeah, exactly. Make me be the bad guy and shit. I'm just losing subscribers.
It's all Carrick. It's him.
Yeah,
it's like, I don't know why you said that, man. I was just sitting there. I didn't want to edit it out.
You should like edit in some font, because I won't watch the end where it's like, in actuality, we completely disagree in all ways, shapes, or form, and he's stupid. I'm just like, why am I losing all these subscribers? It's crazy.
No, what we'll do, we'll like CC it. So every time Carrick talks, it's just like, don't listen to him. He's just being overly negative.
Exactly. Oh, he's whining.
No, but again, it's really good to get both, like every side of an argument as much as we can. That's the important thing.
I agree. All right, well, Carrick, thank you once again for your time joining us this week. It was a great discussion. That was intense shit. And if anything, I'm hoping what this episode of the podcast did was gave people something to think about. Like maybe they'll disagree with us or whatever, but at least I think you could walk away from this informed as fuck.
Yeah.
And if you say you didn't, then I don't know what to tell you, man. You're fucked.
Then you probably think that he hates Skyrim.
Yeah. Basically.
No, he both loves and hates Skyrim at the same time.
Yes.
What's wrong with that dude? He can't make up his mind.
That piece of shit. All right.
Yeah. Alrighty, guys.
Let's wrap this up. Thank you guys for listening this deep. If you did, let us know. We haven't made a podcast this long in a while, so be sure to tweet at any of us with our handles on screen and let us know you listened this far, because we'd like to thank those type of listeners for giving us their time. So we do appreciate that, and we will catch you guys in next week's podcast.
See ya.